Okay, boys and girls, I'm going to give you an overview of your assignment here. There's 3 questions, but you have all the information that you need in the assignment to answer those questions. Now, in class, we've been talking about how people have been moving west, but yet some people would stay in certain places. People would keep moving. You know, that's just the way people are. People are nature different. Some people want to settle. You know, they call them settlers because they settle down. You know, other, young men and women would maybe go on farther west because they heard there was gold in a certain town or whatever. We talked about that. But kind of leading up to that, let me give you this overview here, okay? And I'll be looking over at the screen to keep myself on track because I'm not a computer. I can remember some of it, but not word for word. But there's a Homestead Act made in 1862. Now, what this did exactly was it parceled out millions of acres of lands to settlers. All U.S. citizens, including women, African Americans, freed slaves, and immigrants, were eligible to apply to the federal government for a homestead, or basically 160 acres of land that would be plotted out. I guess they had surveyors go out, and now that's why when you get, number one, it's because of, in the eastern half, the 13 colonies, we kind of came up to the Appalachians and stopped, and then, there your borders are rivers and mountains. When you get out west, states tend to be square or rectangular, or there may be, one with a crazy line river. But what I'm saying is they have straight lines. There's literally a place called the Four Corners where you can stand in 4 states at one time because they're 4 squares. Anyways, people were contentious about the Homestead Act. And here's why. Because the Northerners, and at this time when you say Northerners, you can kind of say, and Republicans, they wanted to open the land to settlement by individual farmers, while Southern, which this time you can say Democrats, they want to make the land available only to slave holders. Why would they not? Why would they not? Because you're talking pre-what here, okay? If they make it, we're headed towards a lot of bad things developing, before and after Civil War as far as that goes. But only if they want it for only slaveholders, it's obvious, to build up Confederacy ideas. And then there were these people called the Exodusters, which is kind of like a play on words. Like in the Bible, there's a book called Exodus, which means everybody leaves. These are the Exodusters, and these were African American migrants who left the South after the Civil War to settle in the states of Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma. Okay. That's 3 things. That's the main overview. Okay. The Homestead Act, it's not our first land grant legislation. It comes up. You can always go back even to the colonial period, even like when Daniel Boone was coming in here. He was sneaking in here, but eventually people like him would get paid to come in across the Appalachians, okay? To get these big pieces of land. Basically, ever since the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, that established the Northwest Territory, which is basically Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. And this stopped the extension of slavery into that territory. Okay? Meaning, you know, we're not going to have slavery up here. Then there's a competition over the mission of free states and slave states into the Union, and we know what we're leading up to here, okay? You know, and as the slave owners wanting to make it to be, you know, the Democrats wanting to make it for slave owners, you know, that's a way of life to them back then. You know, that's a business thing. For the Republicans, they're looking for places for people to go. You know, you got to think, you know, how crowded, you know, places we're starting to get. You know, and if we can move them west and give them all this land that we have out here, you know, that's great. It actually got passed in 1860, but it then James Buchanan vetoed it. Okay. It gets really passed after, because in 1861 the South secedes, and then the Homestead Act gets passed. Okay, because Congress doesn't have the Southern slaveholders in it anymore as legislators, you know. And then I guess who signs it in? Abraham Lincoln signs it in. He's a Republican at the time. He signs in the Homestead Act of 1862. We know about the 160 acres. We had to be 21 years of age. There's several things in there that you'll need to read and learn about. So the Exodusters, I also mentioned we'd be talking about segregation. So Jim Crow segregation became entrenched in the South. During Reconstruction, we're trying to rebuild the South, you know, and, you know, it's the Klan develops, and basically the Compromise of 1877 took off federal protections for African Americans themselves. So what states did is they made rules that were racist, and they let like vigilante justice, like the Klan, happen. White supremacy, you know, it really was no better than it probably was. It was actually worse than it was before. Believe it or not. So no doubt that Southern blacks want to get out of there. So in 1879 we're in the first big migration out of the South of African Americans happens. Most of them were former slaves, and they, like I said, become known as the Exodusters, which takes inspiration from Exodus, where Moses led the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt and into the Promised Land. So the Exodusters really were kind of looking to settle in like Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma, and Kansas was seen like really as the Promised Land of opportunity, because it had really fought really hard to get a status as a free state. So you know that this state specifically fought to be a free state when they entered the Union, that would be where you would want to go if you were a freed slave. Okay. Then you've got 3 questions that you're asked, which you'll have to read all this. You're going to be asked, why was federal land grant legislation so contentious? Was one. In your opinion, what did the Homestead Act of 1862 contribute to the onset of the Civil War? Think about it. Why did the Exodusters leave the South after the Civil War? Do you think life was better for them in the areas to which they migrated? Everything you need is here. There's even some pictures. There's a poster on here. There's some links inside that you can click. You just got to get on it. I'll get this posted up and get it to you. Bicycle. Hope everybody is ready for the ice. Kind of hope we don't get it, but be prepared.